At 2:15 a.m., Lone Star Medical Center felt like a swimming pool drained of water. White tiles, humming vents, a thin smell of antiseptic that never left your tongue. Dr. Elliot Crane cut across the surgical floor with a clipboard tucked against his ribs. He slowed just enough to look at Arden Blake. "You're a sub. Do not improvise," he said, the consonants neat and cool. Arden adjusted the elastic of her mask. Brown eyes steady. No reply. A paracord bracelet sat snug on her wrist, navy and sun-faded the words, "Hold fast," stamped on a tiny metal plate. Beneath the edge, a comb of ink peeked out, neat squares like a Molly grid. Behind Crane, 3 residents lingered near the supply cart. Noah Patel wireframes watching everything. Aaron Walsh, arms folded deliberate. Miles Carter, a smirk that tried to be a shield and failed. They tracked Crane, then Arden, as if waiting for a spark. "You'll take routine cases," Crane said to the room at large. "Appendix, gallbladders, simple. You call before any significant decision. You document everything." He moved on without waiting. The residents drifted after him, coffee cups and skepticism in tow. Arden turned to the scrub room. The stainless sink splashed up her forearms. She counted under her breath without sound, fingertips tracing each knuckle, each plane of skin. Shoulders down, weight centered over the balls of her feet, a habit that was not taught here. Nurse Lila Monroe stepped into the doorway with a cap in her hand. Late 30s or maybe 40s eyes that had seen enough nights to stop blinking at alarms. "You stand like someone who used to carry weight," Lila said, soft enough that steam swallowed half the words. Arden dried one hand, then the other. "I just like even footing." Lila smiled without showing teeth. "Or 4 is yours." Paige said appendicitis. 42-year-old male, short-staffed tonight. "Got it." In the locker's little mirror, Arden checked the seal of her cap. She wound her hair tight, smoothed. The stray strands snapped her glove cuffs. The bracelet shifted. She nudged it back down over the ink. The hallway to OR4 was an aquarium tunnel, all light and glass. Monitors behind glass, empty chairs behind more glass. The beeping from somewhere far away set a pulse that matched the ache in her wrists. A janitor's radio hissed and then cut off. Somewhere a door shut with a rubbery thud. OR4 was stainless and bright, the operating table square in the center like a stage. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Alicia Rao, lifted her eyes from the chart. "Pressure is clean, sets are good, induction smooth," Rao said. "You must be Dr. Blake." "Arden, please." Arden's voice was low and unhurried. "Thanks, Dr. Rao." The surgical tech offered a tray like a waiter in an unfamiliar restaurant. On the other side, a second nurse checked clamps and counted gauze with the rhythm of a metronome. Up in the observation gallery, 2 shadows leaned toward the glass. Noah and Aaron. A dry marker squeaked once on the railing. Miles was not in view. Arden scrubbed again at the room sink, gowned, gloved, and stepped to the field. She took one breath through the mask. It came with a hint of cautery before the cautery, like heat radiating off a dry road. She set her fingers where they had to go. She did not need to think about where they went next. "Knife," Arden said. The instrument slid into her hand with the sound of metal on metal. The first incision was clean. The skin gave the way paper gives. Deeper the muscle parted. Suction murmured. Lights burned into the back of her skull and made a halo out of powder on the drape. Noise trimmed itself down to the constant beep, a steady mid-range, not comforting, not hostile, a clock without numbers. The tech's breath changed when Arden paused. The pause lasted no more than a heartbeat, but in that thin gap something inside her sorted input. Not a thought. A catalog. Temperature at the glove. Texture on the back of the blade. A curl of smell that did not belong here. Arden set the knife aside and held pressure where the peritoneum was about to fight back. The tissue looked wrong, a shade off. Edges that did not catch light quite right. The air above the wound carried a metallic tang under the antiseptic. It raised a ghost of grit at the back of her mouth. "Something wrong?" the tech asked. "Not routine inflammation," Arden said. "Suction wide. I need a better look." Rao glanced up from the head. "Vitals are steady." "Keep me posted," Arden said. "Clamp." The clamp clicked. Arden did not make the call to the chief. There was no time to narrate a feeling he would not trust. The peritoneum opened. The view shifted from red to red with intent. She worked quickly, palm, steady eyes, not lingering on any one detail longer than 2 seconds. She did not waste motion. She did not ask for permission to be right. When the small bleeder lifted under her forceps, she saw where the softness ended and the fight began. The appendix was not only angry, It was perforated along a seam that tucked itself into a fold quiet enough that a camera would have misread it. A ring of fibrin told the rest of the story. Suture Arden said, 2-0, give me the anchor. The tech hesitated. The what? 2-0, I will place an anchor. The needle driver came warm from the tech's fingers. Arden set the first bite and then the second at an angle that would not look elegant in a textbook. The stitch arced and returned to itself and locked in a triangle that spread tension where it needed to go. She placed 3 more equidistant, each one laid by the same geometry. There was a reason for the angle. It kept pressure from torquing fragile tissue. It held if things went bad. Rao called numbers low and even. Pressure 90, Sats 98. Good, Arden said. Irrigation. Let us finish what we started. They cleared the area. The smell thinned as saline washed away the heat. Arden rechecked her work with 2 fingers light as if feeling for a coin in a coat. She closed the layers with the same quiet pace. No flourish, no sermon. On the gallery glass, Noah leaned closer. His palm left an oval of fog. He said something to Aaron that did not reach the room. The final stitch went in and sat down properly. The edges met. Tape smoothed the dressing flat. Nice, the tech breathed, unable to help herself. Arden nodded once. Thank you. She stepped back, peeled one glove with the other, dropped them into the biohazard bin with a sound that was more heavy than it should have been. She rolled her shoulders to push the ache away. The bracelet slid and flashed the metal plate. Rao lifted her eyes again. Whatever you saw at the start, it was a good catch. Arden took the compliment and set it aside. I will write my note. In the hallway outside, the hum of vents sounded louder than before. Lila waited by the sink, a paper cup of coffee in each hand, the bitter scent rising like a warning. She offered one. For your charting, Lila said. Arden accepted. Steam hit her face and made her eyes water. You do not have to keep doing that, she said. What? Making sure strangers do not drown, Lila said, and then looked past Arden at the gallery door. They were watching. Residents, Arden said. Hungry, Leela said, and there was no judgment in it, only knowledge. Arden took her coffee into the small dictation alcove. The monitor was too bright, the chair too low. She typed clinical language with a speed that did not look rushed. Findings, interventions, no embellishment, no heroics. She wrote the word perforation because that was what it was. She described the local contamination, the irrigation, the closure. She did not name the stitch. She saved the note and stood. The coffee was already cooling a ring printed on the laminate. Outside footsteps gathered. The residents had moved from the gallery to the hall. Noah carried a dry erase marker like he had forgotten to put it down. Aaron's expression had shifted from cool to interested. Miles looked annoyed at his own interest. No one spoke. The silence stretched and had texture. Crane's voice came from the far end, clipped and clean. Operative note complete, Dr. Blake. Yes. He stopped in front of her. Up close, he smelled like starch and faint cologne that did not belong to a night shift. Imaging did not show perforation, he said. Labs did not point to it either. Clinical presentation did, Arden said. From the doorway you can make those calls, Crane said. It was not a question. Arden met his eyes, from the table. He studied her face for a count of 2. You call me next time you suspect deviation from plan. I will consult as appropriate, Arden said. It was polite, it left room. Crane's mouth tightened. He turned to the residents. Trauma room now. We have a hand laceration and a possible compartment. Dr. Blake, you have post-op orders. He left. The residents did not. Noah stepped to the glass of the gallery door and wrote with the marker on the inner pane where only Arden could see. 4 words angled quick. What was that stitch? Behind the words, the OR lights, reflected like a lake at night. The beeping in Arden's ear shifted up 1 step, then back down steady again. Lila's shoes whispered against the floor as she moved away. The bracelet on Arden's wrist caught the light. She turned her hand until the metal flash winked and went dark. She did not answer the question on the glass. The marker squeak stopped. The corridor breathed. The beeping held its tempo. The corridor held its breath. Arden tossed the empty cup and slid into the glow of a workstation to place orders. Fluids, pain control, serial exams. Her fingers moved cleanly over the keys, the bracelet cold against her skin each time her wrist lifted. Down the hall, Lila waited by the scrub sink, listening to the hollow music of the vents. A paramedic strode past with a backboard over one shoulder. Somewhere a printer clicked in Word. The place had its own weather. Arden finished, signed, and turned toward the staff lounge. The door swung open on stale coffee and a couch with its stuffing trying to escape. Noah leaned against a locker with his marker now stuck behind one ear. Erin scrolled on a tablet, the screen throwing blue into her face. Miles lined up sugar packets like dominoes he did not push. You did not answer, Noah said, not accusatory, curious. I answered what mattered, Arden said. Miles huffed, which was not the question. Erin looked up. The closure was different, the angle. Arden shook her head once. It held. The overhead speaker cut off whatever else might have formed. Code tones snapped down the hall like wires pulled tight. Code blue or 2. All available staff. Repeat. Code blue or 2. Arden moved before the second repeat. The carpet in the lounge caught the edge of her shoe. She did not break stride. Residents spilled after her past carts and the shine of floor wax that always made fast steps feel like a risk. Or 2 was a box of light and noise. An anesthesiologist bagged with both hands. A tech pumped chest compressions on a belly that was already draped open. The monitor screamed ventricular chaos. A nurse read off numbers that did not make a sentence. What happened? Arden asked as she grabbed a cap from the bin. Post-Cole, the anesthesiologist said between breaths. Started bleeding hard in PACU. We brought him back. He coded as we opened. Crane appeared in the doorway with sleeves rolled to his forearms. He took it in with one scan and planted himself at the foot of the table. I will take it from here. Dr. Blake stepped back. Arden felt the heat of the light soak into her shoulders. She had already reached for the gown. The tech tied her without being asked, fingers quick and sure. With respect, Arden said, and her voice came out calm enough to smooth glass. I know this field. Scalpel. The instrument landed in her palm by muscle memory that did not belong to this room. Crane's face went colder. Dr. Blake, he said, that is an order. Compressions off, Arden said. Suction, large bore, retractor to my left. Start the clock. The room chose. The tech moved as if they had rehearsed. Compression stopped. Suction roared to life. Blood came in a red sheet and then narrowed to a spillway under the angle of the retractor. Arden extended the incision in 3 clean cuts and set her fingers where the abdominal wall needed them. She did not chase the blood. She ignored the first river for the gutter behind it. Under the flood, she found the tear she had already pictured. Not at the staple line. Deeper. Posterior. A vessel that had been thin for years and finally failed under new disturbance. Clamp, she said. A delicate instrument nestled against the slick red. The bleeding changed from panic to argument. The monitor flattened hard and then tried to find itself. Epi and the anesthesiologist called out, charging, clear. The shock threw a ripple through the patient and the table. The smell of burned air cut the room in two. The monitor scratched up a jagged rhythm that could be a start. 2-0, Arden said. Needle driver. I am placing anchors. The tech's hand trembled as she passed the kit. Arden set the first bite with a tilt, took the second through stronger tissue, and locked the thread into a triangular brace. She placed another and another, moving around the mouth of the tear. Each stitch spread tension away from the point of failure. Each one turned the vessel from mouth to seam. In the gallery, Noah pressed his forehead to the glass. Erin whispered, but her voice stayed trapped in her throat. Miles did not pretend not to watch. None of them wrote. Crane stood at the head of the table now, not speaking, not leaving. His eyes tracked Arden's hands as if they were a language he had not learned. Pressure, Rouse said. 70, climbing, 90 over 58. Hold line for 2 minutes, Arden said. She rechecked the edges of the repair with the back of her knuckle, as gentle as if knocking on a door she did not want to disturb. No fresh bloom of red. No hidden whisper of a leak. She irrigated, watched the water lose its color, and then stay clear. The smell of cautery receded. The heat under the lights faded until it felt like only light. Close, Arden said, layered. The tech breathed again. She counted sponges. The nurse threw numbers like offering coins. The monitor softened into a normal song. Compressions did not return. Arden closed the skin with the neat care she gave to endings. The last knot sat down with a small click against the instrument. She took her hands away and pushed to the edge of the field. Rao let her shoulders fall. We have him. The tech made a sound that was halfway to laughter and stopped it, as if she had been caught doing something improper. The residents in the gallery did not move. Crane took one step backward. What was that suture pattern, he asked, each word balanced on a line, and where did you learn it? Arden peeled one glove off with the other. A reinforcement anchor. It distributes load. That is not from our books, Crane said. Neutral in tone, not neutral in intent. It holds, Arden said, and there was no bravado in it, only fact. Crane watched her a second longer, then spoke to the room. Post to ICU, start blood, notify family, good work. The last sentence hung strange in the air. It did not fit his posture, but it did fit the outcome. He turned, pointed at Noah through the glass, and crooked a finger. The residents disappeared from the window. Arden stripped the other glove, laid it beside its partner, and found Lila at her shoulder with a fresh pack of towels. Their eyes met. No word passed between them. The towels found their way to the right hands. In the scrub bay, water beat on Arden's wrists like rain on metal. She watched the red thin and vanish. The faucet squealed. The noise in the corridor went down to a low tide. Crane stepped into the doorway. The overhead light threw a slice across his jaw. For once he did not carry the clipboard. You disobeyed a direct instruction, he said. I acted under the clock, Arden said, drying each finger with care. You overrode the attending in charge. I took responsibility for a field I could see, Arden said. He was leaving us. There was no time to negotiate authority. Crane looked at the river of water slipping toward the drain. He is not leaving now. No, Arden said. Crane scrubbed a hand over his hair as if removing a thought he did not want. My office. We talk about boundaries. Lila appeared at his shoulder. Heart's back and they are moving, she said to Arden and then to Crane. ICU is ready. Crane nodded without looking at her. He held the doorway for Arden and did not step aside. She moved past him, chest empty of breath for a moment, then the air returned. They walked in a quiet that was full of plans they would not say. The floor here was smooth linoleum that showed the reflections of their shoes. The walls had framed photographs of Austin murals and a longhorn under a big sky that never saw an operating room. The office sat at the end of the row. Diplomas, perfect stacks, a window that looked over the dim parking lot and the red blink of the helipad light. Sit, Crane said. I prefer to stand, Arden said. He took his chair. He did not relax into it. Where did you train Dr. Blake? General surgery, various hospitals. Which hospitals? Here and there, Arden said, eyes on the window, not the diplomas. Crane breathed in once slow. We do not here and there at Lone Star. Understood. Then you will understand this. You consult before deviation. You involve the attending in charge. You do not unilaterally invent. Arden did not flinch. I did not invent. I executed. He let the word sit between them. Executed what? The work, Arden said. He has a heart to wake up to. The speaker split the room with a tone that made papers jump. The building's voice followed flat and loud in equal measure. Mass casualty incident inbound. Interstate 35, multiple critical. ETA 3 minutes. All available surgical staff to emergency. Repeat. MCI inbound. The office swallowed the echo. Crane was on his feet before the second repeat. He grabbed his coat from the hook and had one arm in the sleeve by the time he reached the door. He looked at Arden, with me. They left at a run that was barely contained. The hallway poured them toward the elevators. People joined their current. Nurses pulling carts. Residents throwing on caps as they moved. A security guard opened double doors and held them. Arden hit the call button and felt the bracelet bite into her skin as her hand curled. Lila came up on her right with a crash cart and a smile that did not reach her eyes. You are going to want this, Lila said. The elevator opened. Metal. Bright light. The floor shook with the weight of hurried bodies. Crane stepped in and turned to face the hall. Arden followed. Lila backed in with the cart as the doors slid toward each other. The last thing Arden saw before the seams met was the blank blue of the ER sign at the end of the corridor, a color that looked colder than the air. The door shut with a soft click that felt loud. The cab dropped. The breath in her chest found a pace to match the beeping that waited below. The elevator doors opened on a wall of sirens and heat. The ER bay pulsed with light that came and went in knife strokes. Diesel. Blood. The sour of burnt brake pads. Gurneys slid past like barges pushed by white water. A medic shouted vitals over a radio that crackled. Someone laughed too loud beside a crying child. The sound clipped off as fast as it came. Crane raised his voice and people lined up under it. Trauma 1 is chest. Patel and Walsh with me. Trauma 2 is multi-system. Carter, you are with Rodriguez. Trauma 3 is head. Dr. Blake, you are with me. Monroe set up for rapid transfusion across 3 bays. Lila nodded and vanished with a cart that rattled like old armor. They took Trauma 3. The patient was mid-20s with glass in his hair and a scalp that swelled under the skin like bread rising. His pupils argued with each other. The monitor wrote falling numbers. A soft, ugly breath sawed in and stuck there. GCS 6, the medic said, already backing out. Found unrestrained, steering column intruded. Prep for Burr, Crane said, snapping on a gown. Get me the drill. Dr. Blake, retraction exactly where I tell you. No drift. Arden washed her hands in a sink that had not dried since morning gowned, in motion gloved before the last drop fell. She slid in opposite Crane and found her hold with the ease of someone who had held worse. The retractor bit gently into scalp and periosteum. Her wrist settled. The bracelet pressed her skin in a familiar line. Crane marked and moved quick. The drill bit whined at a pitch that tightened shoulders up around ears. Bone dust gathered in a fine half circle that looked like a snowfall no one wanted. The room smelled like hot pennies under the antiseptic. Crane slowed by a fraction and stopped when the resistance changed. He lifted a curl of bone the size of a thumbnail. Dark blood climbed up and out, eager to go anywhere that was not a tight skull. Pressure, Crane said. The numbers on the monitor loosened. The boy on the table breathed without the ugly sound. His face relaxed a line that had been carved by impact. Close and transfer, Crane said. CT after ICU if he tolerates it. Arden held until he told her to let go. When she stepped back, her shoulders informed her that they had been locked under a weight they could not see. She flexed her fingers once. A medic caught her eye through the glass and pointed down the bay where a soldier in a torn uniform lay on a cot. The soldier saw her the same instant. He reached out a hand that still had grime ground into the creases of his fingernails. His fingers caught her wrist with a strength that did not match his color. Wait, he said. The mask fogged and cleared with each syllable. I know you. Calat Ridge. You stayed. Major Blake. The word major had edges. It cut the air. Lila, passing with a tray of blood, faltered by a fraction. She kept moving. Miles looked from the soldier to Arden and forgot to hide that he was looking. An orderly, who knew none of the names, knew to mark the shift anyway. You are concussed, Arden said, and her voice was soft enough that it did not ripple the room. Breathe through your nose. Stay with the nurse. You are going to need fluids. He did not let go. You stayed, he repeated. The rhythm of it sounded like a memory that had worn a groove into his skull. Arden eased her wrist free. The bracelet flashed and hid. Focus on the nurse, she said, and then she was already moving because another gurney came through the doors, surrounded by more bodies than made sense for a civilian. 2 officers in dress uniforms flanked the bed. The man on the gurney wore an oxygen mask and nothing else from the waist up. His chest rose unevenly. One side lagged as if the air had to push a wall to get there. His skin had lost most of its color. Under the tape and the gauze bruises bloomed purple and green. Priority surgical intervention, the taller officer said. Colonel James R. Whitaker, 82nd Medical. He requires immediate thoracic surgery. He is requesting Major Arden Blake. Crane stepped between the gurney and the mouth of the bay. He was not tall, but authority added inches. This is a civilian hospital. You will wait for triage like everyone else. There is no Major Blake here. There is Dr. Blake. The officer lifted a tablet that lit his face from below like stage light. The screen showed a photograph of Arden in desert tan, a cap shadowing eyes that looked the same. Lines scrolled. 6 years, 3 tours, 800 procedures, decorated, anchor stitch, terms that did not show up in standard resumes. The patient requests Major Arden Blake, the officer repeated. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Rao appeared at the head of the gurney, having been called without anyone seeing it. She had already placed a hand on the colonel's jaw to feel his breath move. Airway is unstable, she said. I am not happy with the stridor. The colonel's eyes opened a slit. He focused. In that sliver of focus, he found Arden. The mask muffled him, but the words were clear enough. Need the best, he said. Do not let me die. Arden felt her spine align. The hold in her shoulders released by a fraction. She looked at Crane and saw him see the same shift in her. I will take him, she said. Crane held her gaze long enough to say what he had to without words. He stepped back, or one he told the room, now. They moved. The gurney rolled within a column of motion. People flowed around it. Doors opened in front of them because hands made them open. The elevator arrived because the switchboard had cleared a path. The helipad light blinked through a window as they passed. It looked like a heartbeat too big for any chest. In OR 1, the air felt colder and cleaner. The light hit the table with a white square that left no room for shadows. Nurses transferred the colonel as if he might break with the wrong angle. Rao's laryngoscope reflected the light up under the mask. She tried twice. The jaw fought back. The throat was not where throats belonged. Anatomy is distorted, Rao said, through teeth that did not touch. I do not have a line. Arden stood at the side of the head and read the map that did not show itself. The trachea bulged off to the right. The neck was swollen at the base. The sound of air catching told the rest. Surgical airway, Arden said. Cricothyrotomy, now. Rao hesitated for a count. I can try again. His oxygen is at 80, Arden said. We do not spend him on another attempt. Rao swallowed and nodded. You lead. Scalpel, Arden said. Tracheostomy tube ready? Suction ready. Hold the thyroid cartilage. Feel for the cricothyroid membrane. There. They made room. Hands got out of the way. Lila appeared at Arden's elbow with the tube before Arden asked. The first cut opened a window in the neck. Blood rose. Arden's fingers found the membrane by the give that no textbook can write. The hook lifted. The tube went in on the path her hand made. She watched the fog of breath start inside the plastic and felt the change in the lungs before the monitor told her. Sat climbing, Rao said. 85, 90, 92. Arden looked at the chest. One side still lagged. The flail segment moved against the rest like a loose tile in a storm. She placed her palm there and felt the rattle under her skin. We opened the chest, Arden said. Hemothorax with probable intercostal bleed. Prep and drape wide. The room spun in the pattern it knows. Drapes fell in squares. Instruments lined up like an alphabet that made sense to a few. The field bloomed under light. Arden stood at the left side. The first cut found ribs and then the space between. She slipped into the pleural cavity and was greeted by warm weight. Blood poured over her wrist and off her glove to the suction that drank it like thirst. She followed the source with her eyes in her hand. Not the obvious, not the distraction, the true line. Clamp, she said, and the instrument arrived at the exact second she needed it. She kissed it bluntly to a vessel that pulsed under a film of fluid. The pulse went from shout to whisper. The field cleared 1 degree. 2-0, Arden said. I am placing anchors on the tear. Then we will evacuate and reassess for lung re-expansion. She set the first stitch with the angle that spread force into healthy tissue. The thread moved like a line on water. She locked it. 1, 2, 3. The triangle forms repeated around the mouth of the injury. The leak turned from a mouth into a seam. The lung tried to test breath and did not hiss. Up in the gallery, Noah pressed his hands to the rail as if he could lean his way closer. Aaron watched Arden's needle hand with the attention of a student who has finally seen the move that used to be only words. Miles stood at the back where shadows collected around the corners of the glass. He watched anyway. Crane took a step to the field. He did not speak. He held a retractor without being asked and made himself useful. It surprised the nurse on his side enough that her mouth opened and then closed. Rao at the head watched numbers become firm ground. Pressure 100 over 60, Rao said. Sats hold at 98, rhythm regular. Check for additional bleeders, Arden said. She ran her eyes over the field one more time, not trusting it because trust was not what kept people alive. A small ooze in the back corner got 2 quick bites. The rest held. Evacuate, she said. Suction until clear. Place chest tube. We will do a quick Valsalva test. They worked. The blood left. The lung rose and held. The flail segment calmed under the care of the internal stent and the external wrap. The field no longer looked like war. It looked like work. Close, Arden said. We move him to ICU for tight watch. She sealed the last layer. Her shoulders dropped without her permission. One of the officers in dress uniform had remained in the doorway the whole time, hands clasped behind his back. He inclined his head to no one in particular. They rolled. The corridor to ICU had lights that hummed in a different key. The gurney wheels whispered over ridges at the thresholds. Lila walked at Arden's side, one hand on the rail, the other ready to push whatever button needed pushing. In the unit, monitors waited with blank faces that woke as soon as leads touched skin. Numbers arrived in green and white. Oxygen, pressure, heartbeats making their little hills. Arden stood by the bed and watched it all for long seconds. The bracelet lay quiet against her wrist. The room smelled like bleach and lemon and a ghost of blood that had gone to ground. Crane spoke behind her voice low enough for only her and the machines. You did not wait for permission. Arden did not look away from the screen. I did not have time to collect it. He let that settle without answer. On the monitor, the line that marked rhythm wrote a steady run of peaks. The tension leaked out of the air the way heat leaks out of asphalt after sundown. The unit doors opened and a stretcher rattled past with another patient. An orderly apologized to the air. A nurse laughed quietly at something under her breath. The colonel's numbers jumped. The oxygen dipped and then found itself. The blood pressure slid down without the polite pause. Rao's head came up. Lila looked at Arden a half-second before the speaker did its work. Code Blue ICU 7. The room shifted from calm to tilt. The monitor dropped the pretense of music and went to a harsh alarm that grabbed the spine and squeezed. The call light over the door flared. Nurses moved without words. Crane reached for the crash cart and pulled it forward 2 feet. Arden was already at the bedside, her hand on the colonel's chest, to read what he could not tell them. The alarm filled the room with a hard metallic cry. The colonel's pressure guttered on the screen. His chest rose shallow and stubborn. His skin turned the color of wet paper. "Bag him," Rao said. "Get me a line on that pressure." Arden had a hand on the sternum and another at the side of the neck. Jugular vein full. Heart sounds dull behind the ribs. Pulse thready under her fingers. The pattern drew itself without asking permission. "Cardiac tamponade," Arden said. "We drain here." Crane's head snapped up. "We take him back to the OR. He does not have that time," Arden said. "Cardiac needle." 18 gauge. 6 inches. Subxiphoid approach. Local in. Get me ultrasound if it is already in the unit. We will not wait for it. Lila was already moving. The cart opened like a treasure chest. The needle came into Arden's hand with a glint under the ICU lights. A nurse pushed alcohol across the skin. Rao adjusted the bag and called numbers like steps on stairs. "Pressure 60/30, Rao said. Sats 90, 87. Pad the xiphoid." Arden said, "Angle toward the left shoulder. Keep your eyes on the rhythm. If it dips, tell me before it thinks about dipping." Crane stood at the foot of the bed. His jaw worked once. He did not move to stop her. He did not move to take over. He watched. Arden found the soft place at the point where ribs and cartilage meet. The needle slid through the skin and then the belly wall and then the space under the heart where the sac pressed tight. She felt the tissue change at 40 millimeters. 50. 55. The give came at 60, a slight surrender that no display could show. "I am in," Arden said. "Aspiration." The syringe filled slow, dark red thin toward amber. The first 10 milliliters turned the monitor from a siren to a voice. 20, 30. The colonel's chest rose deeper. The color in his face warmed by a degree. 40, 50. Rao called out numbers that climbed like a careful hiker. 90/50, Rao said. 95/55. "Continue," Arden said. "We will take 100. At 90, the SAC relented the last of its crush. The rhythm on the screen turned from a frantic scribble to a steadier set of peaks. The light above the bed no longer felt like heat. The room let out a breath it had held too long. Arden withdrew the needle with the same care she had used to insert it. She held pressure for a count of 10. She looked at the numbers once, then at the patient, then at the team. "We are stable," Rao said. "Hold tight monitoring." Lila exhaled and leaned a shoulder against the cart for a second. She straightened when she felt herself do it. A nurse smiled without showing teeth. The smile vanished before it could be read as celebration. Crane stepped closer. He looked from the syringe to the screen to Arden's hands. "How did you know?" he said quietly. There was no image. "Beck's triad," Arden said. "Hypotension. Muffled heart sounds, jugular distension, pattern after blunt chest trauma. It is a shape you learn." Crane did not reply. The line on the monitor rode its little hills with a confidence it had not had minutes ago. The doors opened on a rush of shoes. Noah, Aaron, and Miles entered with the look of people who had run and remembered not to look like it. Noah held a tablet against his chest as if it might push his heart back into order. "Dr. Blake," Noah said, "we did a search. There is a paper that lists you as author. Anchor stitch, field thoracics, Kalat Ridge Registry, Journal of Combat Medicine." Aaron turned the screen toward Arden. The title glowed above a photograph from a field tent. The author line read, "A. Blake, M.D., Major U.S. Army Medical Corps." The image caught Arden mid-suture, her hand in the curve of a move that matched the one she had just used. Miles did not hide his stare. "You are military." Arden set the empty syringe on the tray. She looked at the tablet and then at the colonel. The room held a silence that asked for a story. "Yes," she said. "I was." The ICU door lifted again. A captain in dress green stepped through with a short nod at the charge nurse. He glanced at the colonel and then at Arden. "Major Blake," he said, "Colonel Whitaker is stable enough to send a message. He asked me to tell you that you kept your promise. You did not leave anyone behind this time." The words landed where they were meant to land. A picture flashed in Arden's mind that did not belong in this room. Canvas walls lifting in wind. Sand against teeth. A child's rib cage under her hands like a bird trying to breathe. Crane watched Arden's face and seemed to see more than the room. He shifted his weight and set himself like a person about to choose. "My office," he said, "when the colonel is settled." He left them with the machines. Arden stood and watched the numbers flatten into reliability. She checked the dressing at the neck. She checked the line. She set the rails in the right slots. She placed her palm once on the bed's metal and felt the cool run up into her wrist. Then she said what needed saying to the nurse who would own the next hour. "Call it any change," Arden said, "even if you think it is small." The nurse nodded. Her hands were already moving. The room made space for Arden to leave. In the hallway, the vent noise turned down. The posters on the wall talked about hand hygiene with cheerful fonts. A visitor sat in a chair with their head in their hands and a jacket over their lap. The world outside the unit did not know what had just happened and would not care when the sun came up. Crane's office smelled like paper and old coffee. He was at the window with his back to the door. He stayed that way for a count of 3 after Arden came in. "You violated a direct order in the OR," he said. "You took charge in the ICU." Arden stood in the same place she had stood hours earlier. She did not sit. "I did," she said. "You did it because you could see what was happening faster than the rest of us," Crane said. He turned. "And because you have done that move before." Arden met his eyes. She did not look down. "Kalat Ridge," she said. "An evacuation order came during a siege. Intelligence said the base would be overrun. We were told to leave the surgical tent. I had a child on the table. She would have died if we closed and ran. I stayed and finished. She lived. They called it refusal to follow orders. I resigned rather than face a trial. The record is sealed. The part that is not sealed lives in who I am." Crane did not interrupt. The ticking of his wall clock filled a small corner of the room. "I have moved from hospital to hospital," Arden said. "Short contracts, no questions asked was the rule that kept me in the building. People think rules keep them safe. My hands keep people alive. That is the equation I know." Crane walked to his desk and opened a drawer. He took out a folder and set it in the middle of the blotter. Letters. A printout with a Department of Defense seal. A short note on hospital letterhead with a signature Arden recognized from the ICU board. These came in the last hour, Crane said. Recommendations, a request for collaboration from Fort Cavazos, a preliminary statement from the colonel's office. He slid another sheet free. It was a single page with large font at the top. Proposal draft, trauma integration program. Crane rested his fingers on the page. He did not touch the pen. "You know things our residents need. You make calls that our protocols do not anticipate. I want you to build a bridge. Director of Trauma Integration. Combine what you have with what we do here." Arden's mouth went dry. The noise behind her ears quieted until only the clock remained. She thought of Lila's steady eyes. She thought of Noah's marker on the glass. She thought of a hallway at 2 a.m. that had felt like a pool without water. "I have conditions," she said. Crane nodded once. "Patient outcomes over procedural comfort," Arden said. "We will write the justification after, but we save first. We recruit veterans into the program, surgeons, medics, nurses, people who know how to move under pressure, and when a decision is made to save a life, the hospital stands behind it. No politics, no sacrifice of the person who made the call." Crane did not look away. "Agreed," he said. "Administration has eyes on this already. They are ready to back it." Arden let out a breath she had not intended to hold. She looked at the draft again. The black type said director as if it had always been there. The door knocked twice. Lila stepped in with a single envelope. "For you," she said, dropped by the captain. Arden opened it. The letter inside carried the impression of a crest at the top. The words were short, a formal acknowledgement of service, an apology for the handling of Kalat Ridge, an offer to restore rank through the reserve if she wished, a line at the end in a hand that was not official. You did the right thing. Arden set the letter down on the desk where the proposal lay. She did not show it to Crane. She did not need to. He had already seen what mattered when she had her hands on a heart. Crane picked up a pen and held it out to her. Sign the draft, he said. We will make it official by morning. Arden took the pen. It was heavier than it looked. She stood with the tip above the line and felt the bracelet slide to the bone as her hand turned. The metal plate flashed once in the office light. The pen hung there for a heartbeat. The clock on the wall clicked to the next minute. The hallway outside breathed. The building waited without knowing it was waiting. The pen touched paper. Ink moved. The line gathered her name and held it. Crane took the signed draft as if it might slip away. He nodded once. Not triumph. Agreement. He set the paper aside and glanced at her wrist where the bracelet had slid close to the bone. Welcome, he said. The printer in the corner woke and rattled off copies. Outside the office glass, the hospital kept its private night. Vents, wheels, footsteps. Arden slipped the letter from the captain into her pocket. She felt the weight of it against her thigh like a coin that meant passage. 2 weeks later, conference room lights shone against a wall of glass. Morning made the campus look new. Trees in neat rows. A sky that pretended to be wide even over parked cars and asphalt. Inside chairs filled with white coats and scrubs in 3 different shades of blue. Arden stood at the front with a clicker in her hand. She did not use notes. A projector hummed. The first slide held a simple line graph. The drop in mortality was not dramatic, but it was certain. The room noticed. She spoke with the same cadence she used in the OR. Clear, efficient, no flourish. Aaron sat up front with a pen that never stopped. Noah had his marker again. Miles had no smirk left and did not miss it. Lila leaned against the wall near the door and watched the room more than the slides. The third slide held a photograph. Colonel Whitaker stood beside a young Afghan woman in a white blouse. Her eyes were bright. The image came from a phone, not a studio. It was imperfect and true. The caption was 2 lines, names, a date. Arden let the slide sit. She did not explain it. She clicked on when the room was ready. After the session hallway air smelled like coffee and hallway. People came with hands and questions. A nurse from orthopedics asked about training days. A paramedic who wanted to sit in. An OR scheduler stepped in just long enough to say a room was available on Thursdays. Aaron from IT talked about a shared drive. The list of small things that make big things possible started writing itself. In the simulation lab, the lights were lower. Plastic ribs lifted and fell under a ventilator set to a lazy rhythm. Arden stood beside Aaron at the table. On the mannequin's left side, a cut line had been marked with indelible ink. The tone of the room was closer to a chapel than a classroom. Stop following the line, Arden said. You are not drawing. You are finding space. Aaron reset her grip on the scalpel and made a cleaner entry. Her shoulders dropped 1 centimeter when the blade found the path it was built for. Arden guided her hand without taking it over. The tube went in on the 3rd try. Air moved. The ventilator's bellow sounded less forced. Again, Arden said. They ran 6 repetitions. Noah joined in and moved like someone who had thought about it and now had the chance to see if he was right. Miles waited, then stepped forward without being asked. His first cut was rough, and then his hands remembered something from the gallery. He did not apologize for the roughness. He changed angles and tried again. A new voice cleared the doorway. Captain J. Morrison stood with a canvas duffel over one shoulder. She wore civilian clothes with a military fit. Her eyes took in the room and placed every piece in relation to every other piece. Captain Lila said from a stool, "You found us." Morrison nodded to Arden. "Dr. Blake," she said, "report for duty." The phrasing brought a laugh out of Noah that he covered with a cough. Aaron smiled and did not hide it. Miles looked at Morrison's hands, not her face. He recognized the way she stood. He had seen it twice in the last month. Arden shook Morrison's hand. Grip firm, not a contest. "You will take Airway Day with Dr. Rao," Arden said. "Then you come back here and teach chess to these 3. Morrison glanced at the mannequin. "They teach me hospital," she said. "Trade is the point," Arden said. Word of the program moved faster than they did. Veterans came with medics patches still sewn on undershirts. A nurse who had been at Bagram stood at the back of a lecture with her arms crossed and eyes wet. An attending from trauma asked for a slot in a thoracics module. The hospital felt less like a machine and more like a place built by people who wanted the same outcome for different reasons. In her office, Arden hung a single photograph on the wall, not her in uniform, not the colonel. It was a close shot of the paracord bracelet on a table with the little plate that read, "Hold fast." The knotwork made a shadow that looked like water. She set it above the desk where the light could find the metal in late afternoon. She did not use the desk much. Colonel Whitaker came with a transport aide and a guarded smile. He was thinner, his color had returned to skin not meant to be that pale. He walked without the stiffness of someone who had learned the map of pain and was ready to fold it up. "I owe you," he said when they were alone for a minute in the hallway outside the lab. "You owe me nothing," Arden said. He looked past her to where Aaron was setting suture packs in order. "You are building it," he said. "Here." She nodded. He handed her a second envelope. The letter inside paired with the first. Not ceremony, only function. Funding language. A formal collaboration line with Fort Cavazos, a phone number that would answer when she called after hours. It sat in her palm like practical faith. In the staff lounge, Crane stirred sugar into coffee he would not finish. The room fit him less than it used to. He did not say so. Arden stood at the door and waited. "You have complaints," he said, and he did not sound annoyed. "Hallway traffic, shared rooms, time on the schedule." "We are adjusting," Arden said. He nodded. "The ICU nurses asked for your triage matrix templates. They say they are easier to read in a hurry." Lila rewrote them, Arden said. Crane sipped and set the cup down. "Are you staying?" he asked. The question was not about the day. "Yes," Arden said. He did not hide the relief. He picked up the cup, forgot to drink, set it down again. The man had a way of accepting a change by adjusting angle and carrying on. It made collaboration possible, and the pager on Arden's waistband rattled. A note from radiology. She excused herself and did not hurry. In the hall, she passed a family with hospital bracelets that did not match their clothes. They were talking too quietly and too fast. She did not slow, but she noticed them. The building held many stories at once, and none of them stopped for the others. Back in the lab, Noah had drawn small triangles on a whiteboard, as if to understand an angle by drawing it. Aaron corrected one without saying anything. Miles deleted a whole row and started over. Morrison set a timer and made them do it with gloves and music projecting through a phone speaker an inch too loud to ignore. Rao walked in and watched for a minute. She tucked her hair behind one ear. "You built this out of air," she said to Arden. It was not envy. It had the tone of acknowledgement. "Out of people," Arden said. Rao smiled with one corner of her mouth. "Better." Late in the afternoon, conference room blinds cut the sun into pale ribbons. A second session filled with nurses still in their unit shoes and a paramedic with road dust on his cuffs. Arden kept the pace and never raised her voice. When it ended, a few stayed to ask quiet questions about the part where hands need to know before the brain can explain. Evening came without ceremony. Lights shifted cool. The campus outside turned the color of old postcards. In the ICU, the colonel slept. In ER triage, a child played with a sticker while her mother tried not to look at a bruise. Arden crossed the surgical floor the same path she had walked her first night. The tiles still shone. The vents still hummed. She stopped at the window where the observation gallery looked down on OR 4. A tech adjusted instruments in the center of the room until they lined up in a way that made sense to her. She left and turned out the overhead, and the room became a quiet square full of potential. Arden touched the bracelet with her thumb. The metal plate felt cool. She did not move it to cover the ink. The grid of squares showed along the edge of her skin. Her pager buzzed. A call from the ED. "Incoming trauma. Vehicle rollover 2 minutes out." The message was short. The nurse had added a name in the note field. The patient had asked for Dr. Blake. Arden turned toward the elevators. Lila fell into step beside her without needing to be called. The cartwheels sang a little on the seams between floor tiles. Crane came from the other direction, coat unbuttoned, tie crooked from the day. He matched her pace. He looked at her hand on the rail at the bracelet, at the square of clean floor waiting beyond the closing doors. "Improvise responsibly," he said. Arden nodded once. "Hold fast." The elevator took them down. The beeping below set a tempo they already knew. The doors opened on lights in motion and air that tasted like metal. Arden stepped into it. The room and the work unfolded together and took her in. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.